Welcome back to Through the Trapdoor. I'm Katie.
And I'm Emily.
And this is our podcast where we read you Harry Potter fanfiction.
And drink wine again.
Yes!
It's Basil.
It is Basil.
Again, obviously we're recording this and the mini-sode, one right after the other.
Yes, we are trying.
There was a long delay because Miss Olivia woke up.
And didn't want to go back to sleep.
And did not want to go back to sleep. I put her down and her eyes would shoot open and she'd just stare at me like, Mom, don't put me down.
Why are you putting me down, Mom? What are you doing?
Mom, don't put me here.
Why'd you do this?
Mm-hmm.
Is enough time for me to finish my wine and get into a video hole on Facebook.
Good. In case you guys didn't listen to our mini-sode, we have tons of new listeners and downloads, and we want to welcome you all. And I'm very sorry if you started at the very beginning. I would highly recommend starting with season 3.
Yeah.
Or 4.
Yeah, 4 was fun.
I'm enjoying 4 very much, but season 3 was a really good story. That was the one with LaSalle.
Yeah. That was a wild ride.
It was.
But there were also some times where we were real drunk recording that.
I don't know what you're talking about. We've never done that ever in our entire lives.
No, not even one time.
Nope.
Like, I'd love to pour myself another glass of wine, but I have to drive myself home.
All right. Anyway, are you ready to read chapter 16?
Chapter 16! Halloween!
Woo!
It's frickin' bats. I love Halloween. Lily, what are you doing? Mimi poked her head into the head girl's room. Packing, Lily replied, tossing several things into her trunk. Oh no, Mimi moaned, stepping into Lily's room. Don't say that. That means you're leaving me. You're leaving me all alone at stupid Hogwarts with no one to talk to except Socks Boy and Susie Pants.
Socks Boy?
Lily grinned at Mimi's reference to their friends, Matt and Susie. Susie Pants? Since when is that her nickname?
She think that Susie Pants is weird, but Socks Boy is completely acceptable. I mean, don't get me wrong. Socks Boy is a very accurate description of Matt, but still.
Since Matt and I started using it, I guess, Mimi sighed, flopping down on Lily's bed. Do you have to go to this aura training thing? I want to go. You're a mean person, Lily Evans, leaving me all alone like this. A grin spread across Lily's face as she thought of something. Don't get too mad at me. After all, if it gets boring around here, you can always go talk to Melody and see what happens. Mimi shrieked and threw her pillow at her friend. I said I wanted someone to talk to, not someone to turn me into a donkey. Lily laughed and tossed her pillow back. As I recall, it was Sirius who turned people into donkeys, not Melody. That's not the way Sirius tells it, Mimi said in a sing-song voice. Oh, really? And what's that supposed to mean? It means your boyfriend's the one who turned people into donkeys, not mine. Lily's ears burned. He is not my boyfriend, she mumbled, leaning down to organize a stack of notebooks in her trunk. Oh, close enough. Anyway, Lily continued, raising once she thought her ears had gone back to a normal color. Whoever's fault it was, they all promised to stop turning people into donkeys a long time ago. Yes, well, I'm not going to take the risk. That's all I'm saying. Lily sighed. You really need to just talk to her. Mimi made a face. Why should I? I mean, really, Lil. She's the one who doesn't want to talk to me. I don't have a problem with her until she started ignoring me. Well, it doesn't matter, I guess. It was just a thought, Lily mumbled, backing out of the argument before she got into it. Anyway, I just wanted to know if you were going to breakfast, Mimi said when Lily was silent for several moments. After I'm done packing, you can go ahead if you're hungry. All right, Mimi agreed, sliding off the bed. Have fun packing, Lil. See you later. Bye, Lily said absent-mindedly as her friend left. She was trying to remember if she'd packed underwear yet, and if she had, would it be somewhere at the bottom of her trunk? And she didn't feel like digging through to see. Instead, she went to her dresser and yanked on the appropriate handle and then dumped the entire contents of her lingerie drawer into her trunk. Normally, she was more systematic about packing, but this morning she felt impatient. The last few weeks had been horrible. The mountain of work for the aura training students had been unbelievable, and the aura training sessions gruesome. Lily was seriously beginning to doubt whether she was cut out to be an Auror, but it was too late to back out of the training program now. And anyways, it would be an experience worth having. Her schedule today was busy as well. At 11 o'clock, she was scheduled to meet with Dumbledore to talk about her plans for her career. All of the Auror training students were supposed to at some point today. She had to finish packing before she left, and there were several people she wanted to say goodbye to, including Hagrid, who might be hard to track down due to the planning of the enormous Halloween feast that evening. The preparation for the feast would take some time as well, as this year it was not only a feast but a farewell ball to all the Auror training students. The girls had been planning for days what dress robes they were going to wear, how they were going to do their hair and makeup, and who they were going to dance with. Lily had not taken any time to plan any of this, but found that she took a second to think about it. Everything was planned out in her mind. Everything was planned out in her mind already. Also, she wanted to use the library to investigate magical necklaces. Her recent searches had proven fruitless, but she had had very little time in the past few weeks to think about her necklace, so she hoped her research today would turn up something useful. Lily sighed and looked around her room, considering, was she forgetting to pack anything? She left out little things like her toothbrush and hairbrush because she needed to use them again before she left, but as far as she can tell, everything she needed was already packed into her trunk. Shrugging, she closed her trunk and left it at the foot of her bed and walked out of the room towards breakfast. Melody slept in. She should have been eating breakfast or primping or maybe coming up with a plan of action, but it was Saturday and she felt like sleeping instead. She didn't really care about breakfast or primping today. Melody hadn't bothered with her hair or makeup for several weeks. After her revelation about Sirius, she stopped worrying about it. Looking pretty all that time had stirred up many boys' affections, but not Sirius's, and since he was the only one who mattered, she dropped her silly beauty routine. Her mind pondered on other matters now. The hours she used to spend primping she now spent lost in deep thought. Mostly she thought of Sirius and how to win him back over. He professed his feelings for her at the end of the summer and she turned him down. Did that count as having him? For a second, just for a second, Melody almost said yes to Sirius Black, and then thoughts of her uncle, her family, and her debt circled in her mind, and she couldn't just say yes. Being with Sirius at that point seemed worse than not being with him. She hadn't wanted to anger her uncle, and it had seemed clear to her that there was a specific person Hans wanted her to marry. But Melody wasn't playing games anymore. She didn't care how mad he had been after the stolen watches incident. She wasn't selling them anymore, of course, but that wasn't because her uncle demanded she stop. She'd learned things from Hans and he hadn't meant to tell her. Someone or something had Hans running scared. He needed Melody, needed her to marry an old rich bastard and take the fortune for his benefit. Well, never mind what Hans wanted. Melody was a person too, and she had her own wants. Sirius, for example. She wanted Sirius more than she could express in words. Her whole body wanted him. Heart, mind, conscious, subconscious. She had dreams about him every single night, and in those dreams she tried to tell him everything and almost always failed. Sometimes her voice would dry up and she couldn't speak, just rasp at him hopelessly. Sometimes she confessed everything and Sirius would stand up and proclaim he was hopelessly in love with Mimi and didn't care what plight Melody was in. Other times she'd get close to telling him everything, and then her mind would trick her into thinking it was all real, and she just couldn't tell him about Hans and her debt. No matter how much she loved him, she couldn't allow him to think she was using him, because she wasn't. Was she? Sirius was the heir to a large fortune, but she'd loved him before all of that. For 2 years, Sirius and Melody had danced around the idea of being a couple, and now Melody couldn't figure out why. Why had they been so stupid and childish? They'd had moments of kissing, and then they'd just let it lie there, not speaking for ages afterwards, and even then, certainly not of the kiss. If only Sirius had decided to tell her he cared about her one day before that conversation with Hans, maybe they'd be together now. But then again, maybe that would have made it worse. Maybe she would have told Hans she was in love with somebody and that he had all the fortune she needed, and then Sirius would be a target of his too. She'd already put her family in danger. Was it fair to do the same to Sirius? He was no coward. If he still cared about her at all, he would fight for her. But she didn't want him to. She couldn't stand the thought of anyone else she loved dying. Though, if all this Voldemort business continued on, it was likely she would lose many people she loved, especially those who wanted to become Aurors. To hell with being an Auror. At first, Melody thought it was all she wanted, more than anything. After a few Auror training meetings, she realized she didn't want to be stuck behind a desk at the Ministry of Magic for most of her life, any more than she wanted to piddle with disguises or stealth or whatever. All she cared about was dueling. If she had ever came face to face with Voldemort, she wanted him to know exactly who she was. She was prepared to duel him to the death. It might sound like a foolish idea now, but after Hogwarts, Melody had some idea of what she was doing. There were dozens of international dueling tournaments held every year. She just had to practice, maybe find a coach, and get out there and make some money. Through the public dueling tournaments, she was likely to find a link to her real goal, the underground dueling matches. Those were the ones she cared about. Those were the sneaky, underhanded, no-rules dueling matches, the ones that would be valued for real combat against dark wizards. But today, those were useless thoughts. Today was Sirius's last day in the castle, and she didn't want him to leave without at least talking to him. Maybe she could convince him to break up with Mimi and realize that she, Melody, was the girl of his dreams, but talking to him was a start. Melody wanted Sirius to have Melody on his mind when he left Hogwarts, not Mimi. Though perhaps she shouldn't hope for that. But she wanted to at least be in Sirius's thoughts right next to Mimi. Melody refused to believe that Mimi was anything more than Sirius's rebound girl, though of course she hadn't told Mimi that, and of course she hadn't expected Sirius and his rebound girl to last 2 whole months. That was why she hadn't acted immediately upon her revelation that it might be okay to love Sirius. After all, she wasn't sure what he felt about Mimi, nor any longer what he felt about her. Today she planned on assessing both of these things. The only problem was she had no idea how. So that's a nice little teeny one for you guys, since it is late and I have to get home and she has to edit.
Yes, since it is 8 o'clock Wednesday night and I now have 2 episodes to edit and post.
Yes, well, at least this one you can wait a bit to edit.
Yes, I can do tomorrow while Ben's home, so.
We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us on our journey through the trapdoor.
You can leave us a review on Facebook or Apple Podcasts. It would literally mean the world to us.
Or you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at thetrapdoor16.
Or if you have any longer thoughts, you can shoot us an email at throughthetrapdoor16@gmail.com.
Thank you so much, and we'll see you again next week.
See you next week.